In this episode, we talk to Olympic medalist Andrew Steele of DNA Fit about the fascinating insights our genetics provide and how they impact our lifestyle when it comes to exercise, nutrition, stress and sleep.
We use DNA Fit with our own clients to understand how to optimise their health and results.
We hope you enjoy this podcast.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Here we are today at the London headquarters of DNA Fit, and we're with Andrew Steele here, and James and Claire as well. And we're here today basically just to find out a little bit more about genetic testing. Andrew and I were just talking before the interview, and I think we started working with DNA Fit right at the outset in 2013 and 14. So we've worked with the results and with clients. And we know how much value they add, and also we know how fascinating it is for people, how those genetic results are so fascinating.
Yeah, we really geek out on this stuff. We've had ours done, and it is so amazing. We've never had one client that isn't fascinated by this stuff.
And some really exciting developments here at DNA Fit. Like there's more information in the reports that come out. So we thought we'd come here and get it direct from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Welcome, Andrew.
We're calling Andrew a horse.
I'm glad to be your genetic expert horse in this interview. Good. Thanks for coming along, guys. Yeah, pleasure to chat.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell us, to start off, is probably a good place to start. Tell us a little bit about your background and personal experience, and then throw another one at you. How you came about to launch DNA Fit.
Sure. So really the most, biggest part of my life had been defined by the fact that I was an Olympic athlete for most of my career, really, when I was younger. So I spent about 15 years competing at the top level of athletics. Used to run the 400 metres, the 4x400 metre relay for Great Britain. The highlight of my career being I competed at the Beijing Olympic Games in 2008. Actually won a medal there, but in a funny way. So I came fourth at the time in the relay, and then in 2017, 9 years after I ran the race, that became a third place, a bronze medal, because the Russian team who finished ahead of us were retrospectively disqualified.
Oh wow!
So I actually won. I became an Olympic medalist 9 years after I ran that race, and I actually it was about 2 years after I retired from the sport. So I get the medal, got that in the London Olympic Stadium instead of the Beijing Olympic Stadium, which was great, and so I get the best of both worlds, really.
That's amazing! Congratulations!
No, cheers. So obviously I was an elite sprinter, and did that for a very long time. During that time, sort of learned a lot through trial and error about what worked for me and what didn't. So the key thing really is that, I'm from, as people can probably tell from my accent, from Manchester and north of England. I had a really old school coach, really salt of the earth type character who would make us train in a certain way, which was lots of endurance, lots of mileage. And that's quite unusual at the top level, 400 metres. It's quite unusual to do a sort of endurance-led training. So if anyone who's listening has ever had the misfortune of running a 400 metres, have either of you guys? Or
Not intentionally.
Only when someone's running after it.
An accidental 400
like
metre
a police officer.
Good. So, if anyone's ever had the misfortune of deliberately doing so, it's quite a hard event because it's a sprint, but it's a very long sprint. So if anyone is thinking about how to do exercise, you have two ends of the spectrum. One which would be very short, high intensity stuff, which would be like a sprinter's training, and one which would be longer, like a marathon runner's training, and lower intensity but bigger duration. And running up to the Beijing Olympic Games, the first sort of Olympiad of my professional career, I used to train in that endurance way. So we did lots of mileage. My coach used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day, and so we'll go on and do some more mileage on the Mersey, lads. We'll just go down short knees and get some more loops in. So we did a lot of mileage, right?
Yeah.
And that was quite effective for me. Like I made the Beijing Olympic Games. I was British champion in 2007. Qualified for the Olympic Games for 2008. Went there, ran under 45 seconds in the individual event, which is quite an important benchmark. Made the semi-final in the individual, and then subsequently won that medal in the relay. So that at the time we ran the fastest ever time to not win an Olympic medal in the 4x400 meters. Turned out it was fast enough eventually because of the Russians cheating, right? So but
Russians cheating.
Yeah, that's it. So that was quite good. But after Beijing, as you can imagine, I was an Olympic sports person. There was 4 years to go to London 2012, like the biggest possible occasion for a home Olympic athlete. And there was you have this sort of performance meeting, and that's with your head coach, the person who's responsible for making sure you've actually got a place on the team, the people that pay your bills, British Athletics, your own coach, everyone who's involved in your journey, your stakeholders, right? And we had this meeting. We said, well, look. It's 2008 now. We've got 4 years to London 2012. And for you to have a chance of winning an individual medal in London 2012, you need to run about half a second quicker. So I needed to go from 44.9 to about 44.4, 44.3. So literally that much time.
It's
Literally the
fascinating
click of a
margin,
finger, right?
isn't it?
So small, isn't it? It's crazy,
I love
right?
this.
And
It's a fascinating story.
and so, you don't realise actually that smaller margin, actually when you say it now seems ridiculous, but at the time half a second's a big deal, right? So it's literally I have to get like over 0.1 of a second quicker per 100 metres at the race. How are we going to do that, right? And one of the things he said was, well, look, the way you train is kind of old fashioned. So if we talk about the general fitness context, it's like someone trying to lose weight by just going for really long runs all the time, but you don't come across that anymore, right? So it was, they were saying, look, the way you do it is a bit old school. Science has moved on, coaching has moved on, and everybody else at the top level, they do it the other way. So they train like sprinters who just do a little bit of endurance on top of that. So they're like sprinters who hang on as opposed to endurance athletes who run fast.
Right,
Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So I'd done it the old-fashioned way. There was the new way, which most, like literally, the vast majority of elite level sprinters do it. So they said, look, you can get half a second off your time for free by just switching to this better way of training, this more considered average correct method for training, and you'll improve your short speed, you'll get out of the blocks quicker, you'll do this, this and this. And the benefits of that are you'll spend more time in warm weather, you'll live in California for a portion of the year, you go to Arizona, South Africa, all these places, and you'll get some of these coaches who are the most renowned coaches in the world, they've coached world record holders, they've done all that, so I'm like, great, let's go, 100%. Plus I win a medal.
Sounds great.
Plus I win a medal at London 2012 and I'll be a superstar.
Brilliant.
And I'll go on Question of Sport and I'll play charity golf tournaments, I'll do all the celebrity sportsman stuff, right? So
Get my Ferrari.
yeah, exactly. Everything there, So corporate speaking gigs, we're laughing, and so that was the plan. and actually, if we sort of fast forward, I was number one in the UK at that time, August 2008, and if we fast forward to 4 years to July 2012 is when they selected the team for London 2012. I didn't get half a second quicker. I got on average about a second slower. I had a few other issues along the way: Achilles tendon rupture, Epstein-Barr virus or glandular fever, overtraining sort of illness, and crucially, I just was no longer. My unique calling card was that I could hold on at the end of that race. I had I could maintain my pace. It looks like a kick, but in the 400 meters, everyone's dying. It's just someone's dying at a lesser rate than the other guys, right?
Yeah.
So I could maintain my pace for longer. And I lost my individual sort of talent calling card, which was my ability to hold on at the end, right? And I didn't really get that much quicker at the start of the race. That short stuff, it just was not that effective for me. And crucially, I went from number 1 to number 7 in the UK in the day of selection, and they only take the top 6. So I actually brutally
That is
missed
brutal.
out on the
That
Home
is
Olympic
brutal.
Games, right?
Yeah.
And
If that's your passion, your life,
but it's also like your entire identity as a
Yeah.
result of how big this occasion was defined by this. So for 7 years since we've been awarded the games in 2005, anyone you ever meet, they say, "Oh, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm an athlete." "Oh, you're going to be at London 2012." Like literally every waking breath. I know there's no exaggeration. Every waking breath was defined by the fact that we might be at London 2012. And I didn't make it. It was like it was like a death in the
I
family.
can't imagine.
It was like
what
a
that
period
must
of
have
mourning.
been
Actually,
like.
my family had a caravan in the Lake District. I just went to live there on my own for a while. I just needed to just shut myself off because it was so.
You do hear that, don't you, from other people that have had a similar thing. Like footballers, any athlete or anyone that's been their life. That's what they've been working towards. That's how they visualise their future, and then very brutally in something like that, it's gone.
Yeah,
and
so-
sometimes you can't see what it's leading to.
So unlike most careers, when you're a sports person, you do it from very young, before
Yeah.
professional age, before 18. And so your very identity, who people think you are, who you think you are, is defined by your job. And so you're tied entirely to this. You're emotionally invested in the fact that you do this one particular task better than other people, right? And unlike you don't find that with like an insurance salesman. And from the age of 8, everyone says you're an amazing insurance salesman. You're the best insurance salesman in your age group. Oh, you're the best insurance salesman. And then when suddenly you lose your job as an insurance salesman at 21, you're like, oh, what am I doing in this world, right? So it's kind of
It's harsh.
it's very hard. The only similar thing is sort of the military. Like people that leave the military. What do they become?
Who
Who
am I?
are
What
they?
defines me?
Yeah. So it's but there's not much support for sports people kind of moving on into the next piece of life, which is something I'm quite passionate about and work with a couple of charities about. But anyway, so
Amazing.
I had this big failure effectively to make London 2012, and one of the things I did next was saying, well, what happened there, like assessing like why that went wrong, and two, what am I going to do about it? And one of the conclusions was, I was like, you know what, that change in training was great for most people, but I found out through trial and error that the old-fashioned way works better for me. It doesn't work for them, but it works for me. Their way works for them, but doesn't work for me. So I'm going to go back to the old school. I'm going to go back to the graft, back to the endurance, running in the mud, etc. And so I made that decision. And shortly afterwards, I was actually in Arizona on a training camp, lucky me, and a swab came in the post, which is a much less advanced version of what we do now with DNA Fit, and it was Avi, our CEO and founder, who was actually looking for just like feedback from sports people on how their genetics looked and what this report or this potential technology might tell them or give benefit to them. And I did this test, and there was a few things that really spoke personally to that experience that we just recounted there, that I was so impressed by. And I just wrote Avi an email saying, by the way, this is my experience in my career. This is what the report just told me. Well done. You're onto something. I'd love to keep in touch in the future about how I might help. And when I came back to the UK, we met up. We got on very well. The business had just started, but literally just a fragment business, and we started to work together on some particular sort of sports related ideas, and very quickly we obviously had a good working relationship and a good sort of entrepreneurial creativity there, and we worked more formally together from then, and that was really right at the very start of the business in 2013. So the crucial factor is, and I'll just to detail to you, so anyone who's either done this test or has explored genetics, they might come across a gene called ACTN3. You guys will come across this with your clients, right? And it's the most researched gene when it comes to sport, especially when it comes to power and almost like elite sprint type ability, right? With every gene, to put this very simply, there's 3 versions of that gene you can have, depending on what you inherited from your mom and dad. And there's either the CC version, so 2 copies of the C, there's the CT version, so 1 of C, 1 of T, and the TT version, so CC, CT, or TT, right? And the C version is completely overrepresented in elite level power athletes. So much so that about 99% of Olympic level sprint athletes have the C version of that gene. Literally like almost every Olympic sprint athlete. But I don't have it. Crucially, I don't have it. And the function of that C genotype of the ACTN3 gene is it's very efficient at building sprinters' muscle fibre, fast twitch muscle fibre, when you give it sprint activity or fast twitch activity. Right. So when I changed to that more sprint-led approach, one of the factors at play there, only one of the factors, but an important factor nonetheless, was that if I was in a group of 10 elite sprinters, and we were all doing short sprint activity, they were growing sprinters' muscle fibre at X rate, and I was growing at a very much reduced rate. So the way I could be elite was by default an anomaly, because I myself was built like an anomaly when it came to Olympic sprint. And it doesn't mean I can't be one. And that's what people tend to think about with DNA stuff. Does it mean what you can or can't be in the future? Yeah. No, not at all. It just might change the route to that goal. So I was an Olympic medalist in the sprint event, right? I'm not messing around.
Exactly.
So, but I don't have this gene. And so it's crucial to see how you frame that positively as opposed to negatively. And that was one of the factors. A few others: increased risk of Achilles tendon injury, which I had, slower recovery profile than the average, and I had an overtraining illness. So all these things just made sense to me. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I wish I'd had this a bit earlier. And that's how we started.
It's fascinating. James and I have had ours done, everyone, and it is absolutely fascinating, and it does make so much sense. I have to say, when we got those reports through, we love geeking out about stuff like this. But when we got ours through, it was between us because we know each other so well. We know each other so well.
Yeah,
the differences, definitely.
Yeah.
Like I've got a really, really fast recovery speed.
Yeah.
You don't have so much, but I've got a high injury.
Right. Okay.
And that makes sense. Because I'm like, that's a niggle. There's a niggle. It's crazy.
Yeah. You do get these aha moments. So you're like, look again. Oh, that's why that happened. You know.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, and there's probably an element of confirmation bias there. Sometimes,
Yes.
That's why I was never fit then. But,
Yes.
but if you take it all, there is a role and there's an element, a factor that our DNA plays in the way we respond to these traits which we do. So, exercise response, nutrition response, stress and sleep management, and once you can understand an extra element of that, you can better frame everything else which you might measure or control around that.
Well, one of the things that was really fascinating for me was, well, I love this, we're kind of going off piece, but actually it's so relevant to, I think everyone likes to hear different stories about how they found this whole process with DNA Fit. But
I think I know the story you're going to tell.
Yeah, I thought I was 100%, I thought I'd definitely be power.
She was
Power.
Like,
I'm going to be
power.
power. So everyone that's listening, you can either be power or endurance, basically. I was... I thought I'm power. I'm quite strong. I like sprinting. I absolutely can't. On my bucket list, it's not a marathon or anything like that. I just can't understand people that do that. I like sprinting and power. Came back. Like,
TT.
what was
TT.
I'm
Oh,
TT.
right, no,
Pure endurance. Pure endurance.
Yeah. But see, it doesn't mean you can't be good at those power things, like my experience was.
Yeah.
But the way you get to that goal might be a bit more influenced by slightly more reps.
Yes.
Greater
Yes.
volume, different route to the goal, right? Upregulate other proteins instead of the common pathway, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So really interestingly, everyone that's listening, I have told this story a few times before, but I was totally like endurance. I was like, that's crazy. I should probably think about doing a marathon. That lasted about 2 seconds. I was like, no. Still not doing that.
So, I mean, so we just before and we talking about that's definitely one of the factors we need to address here is actually like people think their DNA is like their destiny, right? And I think that's because of pop culture. There was Aldous Huxley in novels. There was that film Gattaca about that.
Yes.
So this weird dystopian look at understanding DNA data. But the thing is, we never frame other metrics that way. We never think, well, my current weight is this, so that means I'll never be lighter, or my body fat's currently this, or my heart rate does this, or my wear. All blood tests, we all know there's a change to make, right? With all this. But for some reason, genetics has occupied this space in our heads of something negative or dystopian. And rather, it's actually no. We've got all these information sources we always consider, especially in health and fitness as a coach. You guys will know I would consider this, what they've done previously, what's their goal, what's their preference, all that stuff. And then I might add this extra element, and that's this DNA data.
Absolutely.
So that's where we come in. It's one part of the picture, but it's not the entire picture, and that's really key that people understand, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating what it gives you though, and then being able to interpret the results and like kind of overlay them all, I guess, intermix them with the person's lifestyle and their goals. I think there's real power in it.
And you have to do what you love too.
Yeah,
like that's really important.
That trumps everything, to be honest.
What you do, you've got to do
your
what you love.
So someone might say to me, "Hey, you could have been better as an 800 meter runner,
Yes,
right?"
but
I don't want to be. I wanted to be a sprinter.
Exactly.
I found that cool. That was better for me.
I feel like sprinting's cool.
Yeah, that's it. I would have been a 100 meter runner if I could, but like the 400 meters was the middle ground, right? So that's the important thing is all those factors. And if you think about like who we are as human beings, we're built on this interaction between how we're born and our environment, what we do, where we live, the pollution we breathe, the food we eat, etc. And we're very good at measuring or changing that nurture part. So we've got the nature and the nurture. We're very good at saying, I'm gonna look at that and I'm gonna change it. But now we're just saying, well, we can shine a light on the nature part, so you can better personalise that nurture, right? And that's it. So it's not about what you can or can't be. It's just rather we all know a little bit more about this. So let's try and find a better route for you. What's your average dose versus the general average dose, right? And so that's the key for us. Is just personalising the route to success as opposed to saying whether you can or can't be something.
Love that. It's really important for everyone to know that. So we have noticed, obviously, you've recently beefed up the reports and actually what you get back. What kind of information can people expect to find out from the report?
There's really sort of, I guess, like 5 major areas, right? So we've got our sort of exercise response or fitness part of the report, and in the new reports we've actually got in total about 40 genetic traits across all these characters. So we've got fitness, where we'll look at the way an individual's genetics might predispose them to better response to different types of intensities of exercise. So short power stuff we talked about, the endurance stuff, and also the middle ground, which is that strength area. So whether someone might, be at that sort of middle ground of load and volume in terms of their own personal response to their goal. We've got different elements around injury, around sort of ACL risk, like Achilles tendon risk, and we've got an overall injury risk marker, and then we've got some stuff around recovery. So whether an individual might need longer than the average advice to recover from intense exercise or shorter than the average for their goal and in their context of who they are and their training history. And then also sort of aerobic trainability, so VO2 max response. If you've got an endurance goal, that's an important metric to understand. Then we've got a whole section on dietary stuff, so whether you might have an increased sensitivity to things like refined carbs or saturated fats. Nutrients, so whether you might need more of certain micronutrients or vitamins than the next person, and then we've also got stress and sleep. So we're actually looking at what's your genetic chronotype. So are you more predisposed to be a morning or evening person?
We were just talking about this this morning.
Right,
we were in a meeting with a psychotherapist, and we were talking about circadian rhythms.
Yeah.
And he was going, I wonder if there is like a gene that dictates.
There's a series of genetics and there's a very, very strong genetic role in your circadian rhythm sort of clock, if you will, or predisposing you to one of these sort of clock types. And basically, that might mean, let's say someone's particularly a sort of a night person, right? So their circadian rhythm activity is higher later on in the day. If you're talking about exercise, maybe it's worth scheduling that exercise slightly later in the day than you would naturally. I personally am that, and I found it when I had to train in the morning, I was terrible. People wouldn't believe I was an elite athlete, right? You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah. And when I actually ran my best in Beijing, my fastest race was in the morning, but because I knew it was coming at 10 a.m, for weeks in advance I was getting up at 3 a.m. Right. So my circadian rhythm, my hormonal activity was higher by the time the race came out. Put me in a bad place when the semi-final came, which was at 10 p.m. the next day. But at least I got through. So that's kind of thing sports people do. And actually, we are saying, well, understand this. How might we just make a small tweak in everyday life to take advantage of that? And then there's also stress. So there's genetic factors around your chronic response to sort of stress, your stress resilience. There's also around like acute performance under pressure. There's a genetic role to play there. And then there's two other extra elements we put in specifically for people who come through what we call our pro consumers, which would be you guys, coaches working with end clients, and that'd be around obesity risk and bone mineral density health risk as well.
That is fascinating, and that is something that's is that fairly new?
Yeah, so fairly we've added those improvements over the last 6 months or so in the product.
No, they're really awesome.
And what we do is, so we've got a very and I think maybe we were going to talk about that a little bit. We'll address it now. So we've got a very strict scientific criteria, right? So how do we know that the genes we report on actually have a role to play in the traits we report? So we've got this whole board, scientific advisory board, our chief scientific officer, our in-house bioinformaticians, clinical team, and they're constantly watching all the research that comes out. Genetics is an ever-growing field. There's lots of science happening all the time. But what we do is we make sure a few criteria. Every single gene that's included in the product has to have passed this a number of these criteria points, and they include things like, is there a consensus? Are there lots of published studies supporting the fact that that particular genetic variant has a role to play in this particular trait or phenotype that we call? Is that effect shown on humans in the studies rather than just on animals? Which sounds simple, right? But it's not always the case. There's a lot of assumptions made on a mouse's DNA.
I know, you read all the pro science sometimes. That's this study in rats. And you're like...
the muscle fibre...
You might be a rat.
Muscle fibre of a rat might well be interesting, but I'm not sure it directly impacts how one trains in the gym right now. And then also that there's... and this is the key thing, addressing that sort of people being scared of knowing this stuff, is actually that there's no bad news. There has to be always a modifiable environmental lifestyle change one can make, which would support or cancel out that genetic risk or raised risk or lowered risk, right? So well, you might know that maybe you are a higher predisposition for needing more vitamin D than the average RDA would allow. That's fine. Take a little bit more vitamin D, or aim for this particular food source when it comes to omega-3 or antioxidants, and just making sure that there's everything that we report on the user can do something about. And that's a key, because people get scared of DNA, right?
Yeah.
And they're worried about, oh, what if I found out of this particular scary medical thing? And we just don't. In DNA Fit, it's just not part of the products. It's not what we do. Yeah.
No, that's what
Exactly.
that's kind of what we try to tell clients.
I think that's a big
ourselves.
selling point for it as well. You know,
I think
it's
it
like
is.
We're
You're
looking at stuff
niching
that's going
in
to
your
improve your
own.
performance and health without looking at medical.
No.
The
issues.
best way to make people interested in this product is to never oversell, not try and sell it. Just say this is the steps we take to make sure this is accurate. This is as conservative in terms of the claims or what we say we can do, and people that are interested. We're saying we will add this element of knowledge, but we won't say this is going to change you. You're going to this is the only thing you need to get healthy or lose weight. Or anything. And it's just we're just adding that extra layer of data in a conservative manner, well approved by a serious scientific advisory board. And doing that with the sort of best user friendly and experience and support possible.
That's amazing.
Well, that's great. And we kind of answered the next question there, which was what do you do about someone getting an undesirable result?
Yeah.
I'm genetically predisposed to be really obese. Or...
So I mean, there's companies out there that offer genetic medical risk, and we've got other products actually that do that too. And there's some of the controversies or the conversation points around those are, let's say you learnt you were a raised risk from another test, not from DNA Fit. So you're a raised risk of Alzheimer's, right? Are you ready to learn that? There's not necessarily any cure that we know of for Alzheimer's. Personally, I would want to know, that, but I work in DNA, right? So I'm biased. So that's a question for users when they come into those other products. Yeah. DNA Fit, we deliberately avoid that by only reporting on non-medical, non-diagnostic. Everything in there is something you can do about. So let's talk about obesity risk. We're looking at what's called a highly polygenic risk score, which means we take into account many hundreds of genetic variants to assess if somebody might be at a raised risk of obesity compared to the next person, even if they're in the same environment. So let's say all three of us here got locked in this room for 10 years.
Let's hope not, Andrew.
It's going to be
Who's going to eat who
For those of you
first?
that aren't seeing the video, we're like in a broom cupboard.
Yeah,
It's very tastefully decorated though.
I love it. It's very chic, but it's small.
It's almost
We're
like
being
a
intimate.
tropical broom cupboard,
Yeah.
right? So
Intimate.
Yes, it is. Now we'd be very warm and very good friends by the end of the period, but let's say someone then delivered us food every day, which was just a bag of sweets, right? So 10 bags of sweets each every day. We know we still see differences in the way we responded.
Yes.
In the same environment, the same input, we do see differences. What that means is, let's say I was the highest obesity risk here, and I probably am because I know my own results. And I would probably say I'm getting obese quicker than you guys, right? Yeah. Well, it doesn't mean if I had then control and say, well, actually, you know what, I'm only going to eat 8 of these bags of Haribo a day, I would probably even that out. So it's just about, if you're in the obesogenic environment, is what we'd call it, an environment that might foster obesity. If you know you're at the higher risk, you might need to be a little bit more proactive, take more care, be more careful, take a better engagement in what are healthy practices for managing that risk. And even if you're not currently obese or on the way to being obese, understanding that to know you can get ahead of the game is there.
Exactly.
Same with bone mineral density stuff. If we know that later in life you might be predisposed to some osteoporosis, more resistance training, calcium and vitamin D content, just engaging in stuff which we know is good for us anyway.
Yes.
But one of the key benefits of genetic data is it appears to change people's behaviour better than just generalised advice. So if you know, everyone, all of us would be fine if we all ate tons of green leafy vegetables every day, loads of antioxidant rich foods, we had a small amount of protein.
Never drank any alcohol.
Never drank any. We all know the good advice,
Yeah.
but we can't possibly engage in every piece of good advice.
No.
So this just helps prioritise where to focus, where to engage in that behaviour change for us, as opposed to the average public health advice. Basically.
Well, it makes people engage in it more and trust in it more.
And adhere to it.
And adhere to it because they trust it, and it's,
There's really interesting evidence out there around increased adherence to dietary change when you give some genetic advice. Even if you gave the same advice, but it wasn't based on the fact that they were genetically
personalised.
It worked for me because when I did the test, one thing I could never figure out
good.
was
We're living proof.
I struggled to put on much muscle mass, so I was always trying to load in a lot of calories while I was doing weight training.
I could always put on more muscle than James.
There we go. But I always put on more fat around my midsection. I could never figure out what was going on. I was like, I'm in a calorie surplus. I'm looking to build muscle, and then the results came back. I'm particularly bad at metabolizing carbohydrates for energy, and I was always stuffing in.
So when you're in a
loads of
bulking
carbohydrate
phase,
energy.
So you're going to get a higher glucose disruption on your
Yeah.
blood sugar than the next person,
Yeah.
Yes.
even with the same amount of carbohydrates. So you know
Yeah.
that's
The
it.
learning
yeah,
for me
yeah.
was like same calories, but prioritise more proteins and fats and dial back the carbohydrates, and then I could not get as fat round the middle and while I'm on muscle, which was great.
You're hardly fat, but yeah, no, it's fascinating stuff, and it does. It makes you adhere to it more and adapt 100%.
So I'll give you have talks there about like two personal things, but I guess to wrap it up, you know, what it's amazing information. What kind of impact can these results have on someone for their health and their performance?
So I mean, you know, the key for us is just reframing that internal conversation about what is healthy, what is the average good advice here. So, I'll give you an example. If you followed the World Health Organization's guidelines for safe amounts of caffeine intake, you'd reach around, they say, up to about 400 milligrams a day on average is safe. That's about 3 cups of coffee, 2 or 3 cups of coffee, depending on the strength.
That's before you're properly awake, Claire.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
before what?
you're probably even awake.
Before I'm
there.
even awake.
Well,
No,
I mean, I've
talking about morning people.
I've
He has to
yeah,
literally
yeah.
feed me caffeine
It's
before
well,
I open my eyes.
To put it in perspective, I've had three double espressos and a filter coffee already today.
Oh, wow.
Like, 12:30, right? So
Come down from the ceiling.
So, and I'm fine, right? But
and I'm absolutely fine.
and we'll talk
Fine.
about why. So if you follow the average advice there, you'd say, okay, well, I'm having 3 cups of coffee a day. I'm not predisposing myself to any of the risks associated with excess caffeine, which are like osteoporosis risk later in life, or cardiovascular disease. But if we pull out the genetic factor into that, it changes things somewhat. Now, there's no average when it comes to the gene which controls your caffeine metabolism. It's called CYP1A2. And with this gene, you either have what's called the fast version or the slow. There's no middle ground. You either have the fast version or you don't. And fast metabolizers, like me, as you've been shown, when they take the same studies of sort of, let's say, risk of myocardial infarction, which is heart attack, there's one study looking at the relative risk of heart attack in this cohort when they drank different amounts of coffee. And those that had 4+ sort of cups of coffee were at relative risk of about, I think, 1.5. Those that had 3 cups of coffee were about at 1. So it matched with the average public health guidelines. When you took the same cohort and split them out by fast or slow metabolizers, the slow metabolizers, even at the average public health guidelines of safe consumption, that relative risk for myocardial infarction was about 3-fold.
Wow.
So even if you're a slow metabolizer, even if you follow the World Health Organization guidelines, you might still be predisposing yourself to a later life health risk. But if you know that, you saw that even at the 2 or 1 cups of coffee, that risk was not raised even in slow metabolizer. So that changing of your personal dose is important. And for people like me, fast metabolizers, even at the 4+ cups of coffee, the risk was just not there.
Yeah.
So and I feel absolutely fine with 10 cups of coffee a day, no problem. I sleep well. It doesn't affect me because I'm a little bit better at metabolizing that caffeine with this particular enzyme that CYP1A2 gene.
Were you good at metabolism?
I can't remember.
I was.
Yeah.
I don't.
Good to hear you're a big coffee drinker.
I've got
Currently
coffee.
drinking a coffee as we speak.
This is my 3rd or 4th, isn't it? Today.
I think it is. Yeah.
We get up at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday morning to do our live workout with our community, so I need it.
So it's about 9 p.m. anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be able to sleep in a minute. No, that's fascinating stuff, isn't it? And it is, just you saying about it's actually obviously this podcast is all for midlifers, and actually it is about securing your future. That's what we're all about, is to basically help people improve the quality of their life, mentally, physically, and emotionally. So what you're saying there about those people using that information and making some tweaks to help their health in the future, life longevity potentially, actually making a few tweaks so the quality of their life.
Well, so it's funny, as you go through
better.
life, that your reason for taking healthy actions changes a lot, right? So you're younger,
Yes.
it's like aesthetic,
Yes.
or it's performance based because you think this particular sport's really cool, and then as you get to a certain point in life, it's about actually, I want to have not only a long life but a healthy quality of life, not just length
Totally.
of life. That's the big differentiation.
The quality of the life. People are living longer anyway.
Yeah,
but
so
the quality of life is questionable.
it's all very well living longer, but no good if you're
you're
confined to your bedroom and you can't move around and see people in your piece, right? So that motivation's there, and the point is, unfortunately, actually, a lot of times people have got to this stage in life and they haven't made the health changes earlier. So now we need to know, okay, I'm going to have to focus on what really is going to work for me, and stick to that. And thankfully, genetics can play a role in improving both of those things. So actually, what's your particular recommended dosage of omega-3, which will help you, reduce inflammatory conditions later down the line, which could lead to something serious. What's your particular best sort of focus when it comes to your exercise intensity? So just all these small things, but cumulatively, you would hope they have a large impact on the way they adhere to that lifestyle change.
Yeah, and I think when we do coach people and we do this testing with them, it is so enlightening. But as you say, some people, not all people, but they have come to it like with either feeling unhealthy or they've almost got the problem first, or starting to see some of the problems and the issues now, and then they're thinking, I need to do something about it now, which is why this is so enlightening for people.
It really is a powerful tool.
And that's it. Look, it's a tool. What we must have framed this as. This isn't like the absolute, the goose that laid the golden egg and it's going to change me, change everything. It's just another tool. You wouldn't base your entire success in health off just your current heart rate monitor readout
or the steps you've made.
Just the steps. But they are powerful tools in making you make those changes. And this is all DNA
and awareness. Actually, that's what the wearables. We get clients say, "Oh, do you wear them?" We don't, but I know from an awareness perspective, if you're not really aware of how sedentary you are or how much you're moving or not moving, it's a really, really awareness, and that's what this is as well, I think.
Especially if you're early in your health journey, if you're just starting out, that's almost where you need these tools to really kickstart and proactive.
Yeah.
Where am I at?
That. Yeah, exactly.
Where am I at? What
you
am I
need your
dealing
baseline,
with?
you need where you're at to work towards something new,
Exactly.
Especially with like the kind of clients we work with, our midlife clients, and they're coming to it fairly new with limited training ability, and then there's temptation that they just want to like go really hard, but actually you can start to look at these and go, well, actually you need a lot more recovery time, so we'll do a short session and then give you more recovery time for it.
It's an amazing
tool.
Correct.
We're big fans.
I'm glad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
It's
Andrew.
fascinating, and to hear your story as well and to share that, it's thank you so much for your time.
Listeners, we work with this tool all the time if you want to be coached by us, with us, but also you can go to dnafit.com and send off for the test yourself and get the results.
That's right. So 2 ways. Obviously, if you're with you guys, you get a little bit extra on that product, that obesity, bone density stuff. You can only access that through a coach, or direct to dnafit.com for everything else.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you very much, Andrew.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you, so drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.